course, these are the people, the only thing that affects you.
That's what they said, we have to do some exploratory surgery.
Went down, fell down the wrong way, and all them were in the van.
CP 5013.
Twisted it, just off the cup. So then, I had 3 treatments.
You know why I hadn't went? Karen started going to her every week,
Ma'am?
and she kept hurting, she kept hurting. I said, they're hurting. She said, no, we're gonna do some hearing things. Well, I promise, I know you just ain't going back. And a couple weeks later, she's okay.
Is Jim coming?
Now, that
He
was
said he'd be a
just
minute
her,
late,
she
but
said.
yeah, he's coming.
He was not, he said, look, I said, do you need to set up? He said, I'm gonna set you up. It was.
The best advice I have is to go out and come back in. Okay. Age 15.
He would sit there, he'd walk in.
Well, that's like it was.
Recording in progress.
So I said, I ain't been
I'm not trying to. No. 62.
Here he is, Jim. Hey. Chris, is the YouTube going, Chris?
You're right, 65. You're right. I'll make it to tomorrow.
That's the best plan I've seen
Yeah.
this year.
Hey, hey,
Hey, Jim.
This way.
how are y'all?
What's up, brother?
Good. Lou, how are y'all? Sorry for delaying you.
Didn't be back.
What's the problem?
We're okay, especially if nobody else is on the call. We're okay. I'm not sure why it's not projecting to us.
That's a good
Somebody
thing.
there.
That's her third cousin, second removed in
Do
South
you know?
Carolina, looking up.
Is the YouTube, did we sign into the account?
But that is something if you get.
Is the,
Yeah, I made it.
Up front,
Yeah.
first bit.
this is Zoom. Is YouTube streaming?
I figured. He said, well, one more.
Is it picking up any video?
He said,
The YouTube is.
It is.
Should be. I'll look on the phone.
Still in business. Okay, I might.
If anybody was to look online right now, they'd see 5 guys that had no idea what they're talking about. But
he's nice.
I'm about ready done with Zoom anyway.
Are we ready to go?
Sigma 2.
Yep. Go ahead, John.
I'm going to call the August the 5th, 2021 special call meeting for the town of Stokesdale to order. The agenda tonight is basically a workshop to talk about some of the information Hazen and Sawyer, our engineers, have come up with. They made a report on May 17, 2021. They developed a capital improvement plan. They did some of their priorities. They ran basically cost on all the subdivisions in the town of Stokesdale. I guess they were under the assumption that when a developer puts it in, that the town of Stokesdale pays. So the total cost was somewhere in the $40 million, but obviously we don't pay to extend the lines in the developments. So some of their priorities are completely different from what my priorities were, and I think probably some of the consensus on the council. And so tonight, let's just make this sort of an informal meeting. We'll go through this report and just talk about our priorities. A couple things, we still have the $1.15 million grant. That we need to either have the money spent or contracts where it's allocated by June of 2022. And thanks to Derek and Kim, we got a letter one day this week from the state of North Carolina. It's one of the coronavirus money things, local fiscal recovery funds. We're going to receive $725,000 over 2 years, $362,737.50 sometime within the next month or so. So I appreciate Kim and Derek working on that. We still have our name in the hat with Guilford County. They've got a $102 million grant in this thing, and we put in for like $4.5 million. I will try to find out before the meeting next week where we stand on that and if they are ready to make some allocation on that, but hopefully we'll get some money on that.
Yeah, and one thing about that, John, I did speak with County Commissioner Justin Conrad today, and he said he didn't think he would see any movement at all until the fall, that there might be.
After the election?
Well, he didn't say anything about that, but he said there might be additional meetings between commissioners and the small towns on that. So just like the town of Stokesdale, Guilford County got half of that 104 up front, right, 52 million, and they'll get another 52 million a year from now.
Okay. So we do have some monies available, and based on our Water Enterprise Fund, we've got about $1,660,000 in that. So I'm just going to open it up. I'm glad we have Todd Galton, the fire chief, and Gene Robertson with Yates Construction, because some of this is going to be in terms of size of lines, of water flow, of pressure, and things like that. One of the things we've already are working on, there were two scenarios up at Boone Landing. One was to connect the little 2-inch line coming off of Oak Level and tie it into, I think it's South Point. The better option on that was to come up Ellisburg Road from the new Byright to right past Gideon Grove Church Road and tie into Boone Meadows. We've gotten two engineers' proposals on the drawing of the plans. We're hoping to get two more before the meeting next week, and then we can hopefully move forward and take a vote on that. That's probably going to be somewhere $160,000, $170,000. That'll really significantly help our pressure and our flow in Boone Meadows. Right now, we've got black bags over those, that new subdivision, the fire hydrants. We just don't have enough pressure to make them work. And that's not a function of poor quality by Will Berry and the developers. It's just a fact that our entry point up at Boone Landing, the pressure was only maybe 450 gallons per minute, something like that. So we're woefully short on that. So hopefully that'll take care of it. I'll just, one of the big things we've been talking about a long time is to get in a secondary water line. And what we're looking at, and we've talked with City of Winston, Bethel Church Road or Hall River Road, whichever way you want to call it, up, I can't think of the name of the road. They have a water line, and they're willing to let us tie in and bring the water line down Bethel Church and Hall River Road. That would give us a secondary water line coming in from Kernersville. It would still be water from the City of Winston. Hazen and Sawyer did a rough estimate, and I think they bid it high, but they were looking somewhere about $4.5 million. I think that's about 5 miles of water line. That solves our problem if something goes haywire like it did. I think it was back in October, about 3 years ago when we had the hurricane. That would be a significant benefit to the town. But Hazen and Sawyer, their immediate concerns were more going, say, from here down to Southern Road, take out the 6-inch water line and replace it with an 8-inch. And then up on Prince Edwards, basically the same thing, take a 6-inch to an 8-inch. Obviously, there's benefits to both of those. It would increase our water flow, but I guess I'll just throw out my thoughts on that. If we don't have any water at all, if we lose the water line on 158, don't matter if we got what size lines we got internally throughout the town, we don't have any water. And so if we can pick up that secondary water line coming in down Hall River Road, that would really help us out a lot, and it would help us long range in the future. If we loop that, we'd have better quality of water. We'd have better pressure up on that southern end of Stokesdale. And so, Gene, if you or Todd want to just sort of give us your thoughts of what your priorities would be, or Gene, you know the water system better than anybody in town, I believe. If you'd address maybe what you think in terms of, would you rather have a secondary water line or some improvements on some of the existing things, or loop some of the roads we don't have?
Well, first off, appreciate you guys getting this thing together and starting to take a look at this again. It's going to be a situation before long where we just can't keep waiting and pushing it out and pushing it out. Two scenarios. The one line that they spoke of, and I had, until the day they brought this aboard, I had no idea that there was so-called an issue with Countryside Manor at all. I have not looked at Todd's reports. I would suggest the town ask Todd, have his guys go out, let's flow those hydrants, see if in fact we're well below where we should be. Keep in mind, if it is down, that does not belong to the town. We stop at the meter on the shoulder of the road. Everything inside belongs to the Countryside. That's private owned.
Gene, what size line do they have internally from our meters? A 2-inch?
They're running, they came out of the meter vault, I think was 6-inch, and then it reduced down to 2-inch. The problem I have is we do not even have an as-built that shows the water system for Countryside Manor that I'm aware of in Town Hall. The second source, you know my concerns. I've expressed them for the last 2 or 3 years. If something happens on that line on 158, God forbid, we have lost this town until we can get them back online, haul in water, pump water, do whatever we got to do, and try to keep it going. I was in the middle of that when it blew out up there, and I had some restless nights for the town citizens because I was concerned what was going to happen. Luckily, by the grace of God, it didn't. I could go either way with it, preferably, unless I see some issues, and Todd and I look at some of these things, and he brings it back to you, and look at these flows that they're really concerned about. If it's not there, then I think our second source is the way we need to be looking. The other thing that you mentioned a while ago, stepping away from that, is the loop off of Ellisboro versus Hall River. Todd and I went out, you met with us that day, John, you seen the flows. We done some flows there at Blues Creek Road and Ellisboro Road for the new by right. Flows are much better. I think going up Ellisboro Road, if I done anything, I would take the funds that was set aside, or you're looking at setting aside for the South Point Drive, that little 900 foot, right, and apply it back over to the other side. Get an engineer's drawing in it, get comfortable with it, send it out, get bids on it, whatever you want to do.
That's what we're trying to do.
That's my approach on that. But unless we see some issues, I definitely think we need to look at a second source. If we have issues on that end, and if we're seeing issues on that end, then we need to look at it, because there's a couple of ways that could work. they say put a 12-inch in for the 8-inch. Well, you've got an 8 and run parallel with it, you got a 6. You've got one on Athens Road, you've got one on 158. They're both going to the exact same contact point at the car wash. They tie in right there. And if in fact there's a flow problem there, we need to see it. I also would like to have council to talk to Todd about, now that they've connected Peony Drive back in to Northwest Meadows, let's get those valves opened up once they're ready to turn them on, and let's see what those flow rates are in those hydrants in that subdivision. That was another one that we had some concerns with. And I'm hoping now that it's looped and tied together, we're gonna see those pressures resolve themselves and come up.
It should be looped now.
Yeah,
Yes,
that was
yes.
only $3,500.
But I'm not sure, yeah, you guys paid for the connection, and I'll tell you, that's probably the smartest money you ever spent. I mean, you know, within 3 joints of pipe, and they're gonna just stub it out. That was asinine. It loops the system, it helps with the quality of water. It's gonna help with the flow and pressures, in my opinion. But that's something we need to take a look at and see where we're at there. I still think that it's got to help it from what it was. And I had never, like I said, I asked Todd about it, and I'm like, I never heard of an issue down at Countryside with those, because everything feeds off of that line. Culp is one of the big consumers, and the other plant, OmniSource, or whatever it is, they're a big consumer, but not to that kind of volume that they would be interfering and dropping pressures. I don't think at all.
Does Countryside have sprinklers?
John, I don't know. I don't know. Like I said, I have been into the site before, but to visit, but I have never been in to look at their water system.
Part of it does, not all.
Okay.
Is it the old part that's not on it and the new when they were building back?
Put the new and they retrofitted some of the old.
But they haven't, is it complete?
To my knowledge, they have not done the entire building.
So there's no fire hydrant internally in Countryside, it'd be right the one on 158?
No, there are
Yeah.
3 internal
Oh,
on their property.
on the 2-inch line? On the 6-inch?
6-inch to the
And then they drop down to,
and then everything else spurred off with 2-inch services.
so we would have fire protection down there.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, you got water on the hydrants, yes.
So Gene, anything past the entry to Countryside is owned by Countryside? Kind of like my house, anything past my driveway, that 2-inch pipe going under my house is mine, but at the driveway, that's the town's.
All of that belongs to the town. What we do, same way with these subdivisions, we own the mains once they release them to us. Countryside had fire protection in before the Stokesdale water line was put in. They
Okay.
wanted to go on the water, so they actually contracted, had the meter vault set, we installed a meter years back. We own the meter vault out, from the meter vault into their property, and their fire protection is privately owned.
And how far into that driveway is that meter vault?
It's right off the shoulder of the road, you can see that
Okay.
big, it's a big underground vault right there.
Okay.
Actually, if you look at their entrance, Derek, there's one on the left belongs to them, one on the right goes over to the plant.
Okay, cool.
To ask you a question, Gene, Oak Level Church Road, right, as you turn into Boone Landing, South Point or North Point, we got that 2-inch line. Pressure was pretty good on, Oak Level, I forgot, it was 650 or 750. We've got a developer who's been approved for 26 lots on, almost to the county line there.
Right.
Would you anticipate any problems there? I know that's sort of a high point on the town.
It is a high point on the town, John, but here's what I looked at, and I thought about that. If we go in and cut into South Point Drive from Oak Level Church and tie back into Wheelberry, well, now that the original line, it wasn't a South Point Drive.
Right.
It was looped out around where it was first developed and came back in. If we cut in, then we're gonna start taking pressure off of the other side of that, and it's gonna be a loop, but we're gonna push that pressure back out toward Will, back toward the Ellisburg end on that dead end out there with that blow off. If you're gonna develop and you cut that 6-inch in, I think you're actually hurting yourself feeding out with future development past that intersection. If you go in on Ellisboro Road and it loops in, it's gonna come from Ellisboro all the way back through, hit that 6-inch that's already there, so I think it's a win-win on both sides. That's just my opinion.
But we'll put in an 8-inch line, right?
He did, on his main,
So if we
on
go
his
down
main.
Ellsworth, we go on an 8-inch.
We definitely wanna
And
go
then
with an
that
8,
Go back, but Boone Landing has a 6-inch, right?
correct,
Okay.
correct,
And Oak Level has a 6-inch.
correct.
And they go to what, a 2-inch on the individual?
I'm sorry?
They go down from an 8 to a 2 on the individual.
Yeah, what they
house.
done, when South Point Drive was put in, it actually, at the time when it was developed, it was a couple of lots on it. It was sold out to a builder. He wanted to tie on off of Oak Level Church Road, come up South Point Drive to furnish at that time 5 houses. We have since then, on the other end with a 2-inch, we service 2, we got 7 houses there that's on the service, is what we've got on that, on
All
that
on a
2-inch. The 2-inch more than services them with no issues.
But they're about maxed out though, right? That's almost a proprietary. just
Yeah,
for that
you
cluster.
wouldn't wanna go over 10 on a 2-inch.
Yeah.
But everything in there is developed, so the only one that I'm aware of, well, it's a couple that's not on the system, but they would be on the other street, they wouldn't be on South Point.
But they're sufficient at this point for that
Correct.
one little cluster.
Correct,
If you build out from there, they're self-contained.
yeah.
Okay.
So Gene, like, down around Southern Road, Moritz, that area, you know, a couple years ago, we had you price out,
Right.
looping some down there.
Right.
Would that help us significantly, or is that just sort of it'd be nice to have, but it's not a quite a priority?
It's not, John, it would be nice to have, but it's not anything in there that's going to develop if you go at 158 and you turn left on Southern, it goes up and hangs a right on Moritz. That's where it stops. It don't go any further than there. When it goes down, it turns and comes back up Patricia. Stops short of Patricia. Well, I'm sorry, let me take that back. It stops at Southern. It skips over to Patricia, and Patricia runs all the way back to 158. Moritz has no water line on it at all. Now, on 158, the 8 inches ran all the way up to Moritz, but that's where we ended it at. We never went down Moritz. I think in there it's like 6, maybe 7 homes on Moritz. They're all on well. Southern, I'm not Southern, but Patricia, it's pretty much developed out. It's like 7, maybe 8 homes on that. And they've got 6-inch almost to the end. When you get to the hydrant at the last house, it reduced there with a 2-inch, went down to the bottom of the hill, into the street, and it's a blow off there.
Now, the new Family Dollar tied into city water, right?
Right.
And that's the end of our line.
Yes.
It went from Colton down to there.
Yes.
Well, they put in an 8-inch there. And they extended the 8-inch line
Which one?
down on 158 to Family Dollar from
Oh,
Colton.
no, they tapped into ours. They done a tap
We
on
were
our line.
already there. I thought they had
Yes.
to extend it from
Yes.
Colton.
Actually, we done the tap last week. We went out, they got everything scheduled, set up. I got with DOT about adjusting the valves out because we are gonna have a valve in that turning lane. Made them where it had to be adjusted out flush with a DOT approved valve box. We put the tap in, we also set their meter in. They got a 1-inch meter servicing it. They're gonna have a restroom and 1 washroom for the mops and stuff like that, so.
Good.
Is
Now, cold water's in, right? Or in the process, the new
Cold water
subdivision?
is in the process of being put in.
But they've tied in from 158 up to that
Yes,
entry.
yes.
Happy Hill, we haven't heard anything. Are they doing anything on that?
Haven't seen anything on Happy Hill.
Okay.
Nothing yet. Cold water, let's put this in the back of our heads too and make note of it, that if we go back into doing a joint venture with Forsyth and Guilford, we need to determine and talk to Forsyth DOT or Guilford DOT. Forsyth DOT kind of threw some kinks in things on where they wanted stuff located. It took some arguing on our point, and I finally had to convince them that, look, you cannot put those hydrants up on the slope and expect these guys to work it. They finally conceded to let us put the valves and the hydrants where they should be behind the ditch line. The reason they fought it, they were talking about maintaining the shoulder. Derek, how many times have you ever seen DOT come down your street and maintain the shoulder, other than they may knock the ice out?
Yeah, I've asked about 3, but.
Yeah.
For my issue,
We,
but.
we want our water line the first, closest to the road, and they want the
Exactly.
most
They wanted to
distance.
push us back, they would have pushed us back so far that when
We were
Duke
down,
Power
they were
came
down,
in,
they wanted it like 20 feet off, and Gene and I talked to DOT, and
they asked the developer to add an additional easement beyond the right.
10 foot.
10 foot.
Right.
We finally got them off of that, because what they were gonna do, they're gonna put us back so far that when everybody comes in plowing in power lines, they're gonna go right through the water system. We always try to stay out close, let them get behind us, and that's the way the power companies, if you go down Peony, every one of their transformer box, they drop in behind the water line all the way through, and they do it in all subdivisions now. But we got that squared away, got some concessions with DOT, Forsyth County, and they're good with it, so.
Okay. Todd, can we ask you a couple questions? Getting back on the 158, say from the school down to, up as far as our lines are. Have y'all checked the water flows on those? I know you do about once every 2 years. Are those okay? Over 500 gallons?
I don't have them with me, so I couldn't give you the exact numbers, but we bring a copy up here. Gene has a copy. He may know them better than I do. But, yes, we go out and actually flow them once every year, and then we flow test them, and we're allowed to do 20% every year, which means we do 100% over 5 years. So what we do is we've zoned the town off. We've got 4 zones, and we pick the number we're gonna test in a zone every year, and every 5th year we come back, or 6th year, we come back to the very first one. But we check them yearly. We call it a maintenance check, and we put a gauge on it to check the static pressure on it, and that just basically tells us how much pressure's on that hydrant, how much is in the line. And if we start getting low flows, then we call Gene and say, look, our static has really dropped from last year to this year. If we flow and we start getting lower flows, we contact Gene. He brought up an interesting point. We've probably been working on it for 4 years. Nobody can figure out why the flows on Peony are so bad when it's so close to the hydrant, and you got roughly 50 pounds of head pressure on that line. And Gene is open and closed valves. We've tested them. He's opening and closing. And for some reason, that particular line just does not want to pick up the gallons per minute or the pressure. Now, we will be testing them in the new part of tree line once it's turned over to you guys and Gene calls us and says, okay, y'all can go run your test on them. Our curiosity is how those flow. We're gonna test them a little bit backwards, because when we get new ones, we test them all at one time. So we have an initial reading on them. Then we're able to tell where our losses are. So this year, we'll do the same thing. We'll test all in, but then we're gonna back up to Peony and see if any of those pressures and gallons per minute have picked up since it's tied in and looped. And we won't know that until Gene says, okay, y'all have at them.
So from a fire standpoint, what would be your priority? A second line or some of the improvements?
You know, I think you guys have got a tough job. And I think since the system was put in, 18 years ago, it was started in about 2003, I think all the town councils has done a really good job trying to do what they could do, what they had to work with. But as we grow, and as we all know, there inherently becomes additional issues. I had the opportunity to see the line that was out of the ground up on 158, and I think we were very lucky as a town that we had a citizen that saw that. And, you know, everybody involved was able to get on it. There were plans made if this happens and what are we gonna cut off and all. So I think having seen that, just from my perspective, it probably pushes, or it would push me to look at that second line would be my priority. Now, from a firefighting standpoint, obviously, we like the water, makes our job much better. But we still have tankers from our mutual aid departments that bring water with them just in case, because you never know when there may be a problem. Hence the Kelly Lee Drive that morning where lightning struck. Who in the world knew lightning was gonna strike a water line at 4 o'clock in the morning? Excuse me, and you would have an issue with it. But had that not been called and had they not been able to salvage some water in the tank and get everything cut off, had we had a fire, we would have still had our automatic and mutual aid companies bringing water with them on the tankers. So, we have a contingency plan if we run into a problem with it. But I would say from a pure safety standpoint and a what-if standpoint, you're gonna do for all the citizens on the line, in the town that are customers, you know, the second line makes really good sense to me.
Anybody
Todd, what would you do if there was a fire in that Boone Meadows?
Meadows.
Boone Meadows development today?
So we would have the tankers coming. I think the good part of that is obviously we wouldn't use, those hydrants, and Gene and I
Right.
talked about that earlier. But, there are good hydrants close enough that we could go to them, which means we don't have to transport the water as far. So that certainly makes it easier on us too. Some of these places that you have a bad hydrant or a bad area, and then you have a good hydrant, if they're close enough, we can actually set a truck up on that hydrant and have them pump from there to us. So it just depends on the situation, Derek, you know, how you get it.
But essentially, let's assume that those other hydrants weren't close in the other development,
Yes.
Boone Landing, I believe it is.
Right.
In the new development, Boone Meadows, do those hydrants, do they do us any good right now as they are?
I have told our people to do not use it. I've told our volunteers and our career staff, do not use them. And Gene and I talked, and one of the reasons we wanted to put the bags on it was to make sure that none of our mutual aid or automatic aid equipment come in with the best intentions, not knowing, use it. So no, we would not, because I wouldn't feel comfortable. I think the flows are too low. And we try to keep a, certain static and residual pressure on the gauges on our trucks so as not to harm the system, because you can cavitate and you can separate pipe and do stuff if you're not paying attention to what you're doing. So we have a safety factor built in there. Like I said, we if we need it, we enjoy the water system
Right.
being there, and we certainly don't want to do anything to cause it problems.
I was surprised to see on the CIP report that they mentioned Prince Edward Road, replacing the 6 or 8 inch pipe there. If I'm not mistaken, I think that pipe went down for the new Northridge development. And, you know, maybe there's 80 homes there. Probably not right now, but they will be.
Originally back when we put the system in there, it was just out Princess Road.
Okay,
You drive.
okay,
There again, it's like 8, maybe 10 homes that went on.
right, right,
And then all of a sudden, like we talked about before, really got to start watching how we size our pipe because of growth. And then
Right.
Francis Disney says, well, I'm gonna develop this, and he's put 5 phases in there and several homes.
right.
But there again, do you know of any issues we're having
In Northridge?
at Northridge?
No, I don't, but we haven't tested the backside where we're down and back up and
Okay.
around, so.
And they just got through, they just finished the last phase, phase 5. And there's 2 hydrant on that. They've loaded the line. They have tested it. Test results are back, supposed to be good. John has to sign off on the package, of course, to release it, and then we'll go in and I'll turn you loose on those. And that's something else, guys, we need to talk about too. We need to devise a system to where when these developers go in, and I try to catch and meet with every utility contractor there is. And I'll have to say it about my competitor. Thomas has been super good to work with. He's got a great superintendent. He works well with me. But when they go in and doing these phases, we need to know when they start that phase and when they end that phase. We didn't get that on a couple of phases in there. They were already well into it. But we need to know that, especially on the completion of it. Because for one, he's got to run his samples. he's gotta turn that and this report into the town and for us to sign on it. Please, when you sign off on it, let me or someone know, whoever's looking after your water, Gary, whoever, that it's completed, it now belongs to Stokesdale, because that in fact starts our warranty period.
Well, Gene, it sounds like we just need to sit down and write out a process.
Exactly.
And develop it. So
Exactly.
I'll be happy to do that with you, and council can approve that process, but
We just, you know, for a long time, Todd can tell you, I mean, the plans would come in, they'd give me a set, Todd a set, of course, council, and then we would review them before it ever started, just preliminary plans. Because there was things we didn't like about where they were putting the water, how they were putting the water, size they were putting the water, materials they were using. Todd was more concerned with fire hydrant locations where they should be, and we're
Sure.
still doing that. And we get started off with it and we're on it, but we're not getting to that completed end where it's enough communication to get it turned over to Todd and I. I just signed off on that phase, it's ready to go. I'll let Todd know it, or I'll let him know, either one, and we can get in there and get on top of it. We should have never got so far behind on the North Ridge. No, not North Ridge, Wheelberries.
Boone Meadows.
Yeah, we got tripped up on that one, guys, and I'm telling you, these developers are notorious. They do not want to pay an engineer to do a hydraulic study. That is required. They should have their engineers to come out, flow the hydrants, do a hydraulic study, and guarantee the town that with the flows we have right now, this is what you're gonna have on your fire protection.
what is that required by? Is that a law? Is it a town
Well,
policy, or who requires
It
that?
should be in our specs.
Okay,
And if you go anywhere in Guilford County and you do a development, and Forsyth, I'm pretty sure, without a hydraulic study, and you don't fill that out by an engineer and it's sealed and stamped, you don't develop. Here's what they're doing. We've seen them circumvent the system. They like to come up and get a report from Todd and look at what the hydrants has done. He just told you, we're on a 5-year cycle. It could change 5 months, much less 5 years. And they want to use his flow numbers. And then when you confront them, they say, well, we took what the fire department give us. That's not right to Todd. It's not right to us. They don't need to put that liability on us. They need to be made liable to have it done. I think, John, under a major subdivision, correct me if I'm wrong, you have to do a hydraulic model.
Yep.
I think
And
that
actually,
is
Will Berry
required.
did that. You remember,
Exactly. But the numbers was pulled from Todd's reports.
So he didn't do it.
He needs to, whoever's putting in his development, that developer should be told up front, have your engineer, or he's gonna get someone, your engineer's gotta get someone to do this and give us a flow report when you come in with your preliminaries, so we know we've got fire protection.
yep. Now, we just met with Hazen and Sawyer, Chris, I believe it was, Cruikshank, and he's updating our water specs again. We did that about a year and a half ago.
Right.
I think we've gotten most of everything we need. Of course, we've been having pre-construction meetings, but some of these guys are doing it without the pre-construction. That's why I ask you, is anything going on Happy Hill? I mean, some of these.
Exactly. Exactly, and there again, you know, we're right on that Guilford Forsyth, so definitely gotta stay on top of it, because it reaches way back around off of Happy Hill. One other thing I would recommend, you guys are doing some pricing with the engineers, different engineering firms about pricing some of this stuff. You can ask them, but I'm pretty sure, and I may be speaking out of turn, that they are required, if requested, to furnish you that report for those flows. And it has to be from their engineer, not from Todd's report from 4 years ago.
Yeah, I think, don't we have a minimum of 500 gallons per minute? Isn't that, I know that's what you want, a minimum, isn't it?
No, I'd actually like to have more than that, but we got some that are lower. The reason being just the size of houses that we're having built. You know, as I said in one of my reports a couple of years ago, we got houses being built now that are bigger than commercial structures in the town that were being built 15 or 20 years ago, much larger. So obviously the fire flow is greater at that now. If you ask me what we could get all across the town to be happy, if we could get 750 gallons of water a minute, that would be efficient. And I think we're finding that you guys actually helped one of the areas out when you closed the loop on Lester Road. That
Yep,
improved
yeah, that improved tremendous.
both ends
Yep.
and the center of that flow. And we've actually seen it get better over the last 2 years. Back to that 5-year testing deal. When I told y'all that we break it up in zones, it doesn't mean we test every hydrant in that zone. We may, let's just say zone one's got hydrant 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Well, this year we may test 1 and 3. We make sure we test more than one, and we
Sure.
test them in line, so if there is a problem, we got 2 tests on that line that we can tell, and it gives Gene and them a starting place in front of and behind.
Is gallons per minute, is that the standard, gold standard of measurement for fire protection? What about,
Yeah,
static pressure and,
basically, the more water we get, obviously the more water you can put on the fire.
And the distance between fire hydrants. Some,
Right.
ours are
Yeah.
800 feet, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
ours are.
Yeah, we have on the main thoroughfare coming in, they're 800. In all subdivisions now, I think we've reduced that to 500. Some of them even closer than that, depending on if it's a cul-de-sac street in it. We've tried to tighten all that up and get them a little closer, especially in certain areas of it. And that's a good thing about Todd going over these plans with us. He can look and say, okay, yeah, we have a hydrant here, but we're gonna get back down off of this, maybe this cul-de-sac or off this stub, and we really need something here. And that's why
Okay.
he goes in and kind of relocates and shuffles.
Yeah, Derek, getting back to, you had asked a question about Prince Edwards.
yeah,
Back when we put that in, standard was 6-inch line, and we revised that last year, a year and a
Yeah,
half
we,
ago. It's
yeah,
now
when
an
we done
8-inch.
that, and there again, you've heard the story before, I don't need to repeat it, but we tried to get, back in 2001, when this thing was drawn, they wanted every foot of line they could get for the money. Everything on main thoroughfares was 8, and off streets like Prince Edward with very few homes on it was 6. Hindsight now says we should have done 8, a minimum of 8.
what about new developments? Like, I think 6 is the max in Angels
Eight.
Glen,
Eight's a
That's
minimum.
but 8 now,
Yeah.
8,
eight, okay.
and
We
they go
do,
down to 2.
we do
on the
8 on
cul-de-sac.
all the main thoroughfares. If they're shorter streets, less than, I think we got it set at 20 homes, 6-inch. If it's a cul-de-sac street, 6-inch just short of the cul-de-sac with a hydrant, and then 2-inch around the perimeter.
Angel Purdue right here, is that 6 inches or 8 inches? Do you know?
I'm gonna say, well, I'd be speaking out of turn. I'll check and see, Derek, and let you know on that. I'm thinking 6, but
that
don't hold
still-
me to that.
Still goes down to 2 per house though, doesn't it?
In front of my house, it's 2, but I think
2
those are only the
inches.
cul-de-sacs.
Yeah, but I'm saying if it comes down though, if you get your 6 or 8, whatever. if
Yeah,
that
Derek's
unit-
got 6-inch down to the hydrant just above him.
Yeah.
And then from
But
there
he's still
down around
basically-
his cul-de-sac is
Each
2.
address will end up with a 2, 2, 2.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm really getting at is looking ahead to the future. Right now, Angel Purdue, and full disclosure, I live down here, so think about that. But so there's 110 homes down here right now, and we've got
Correct.
what I believe is a 6-inch line in front of Town Hall, servicing these 110 homes. There's that big piece of property down here, and I don't know what's going on with that. It could be developed in 6 months. The start of it, it could wait 6 years. I don't know, but I think
Right.
the reality is that will be developed, and that would essentially double the number of homes.
Right.
If we're at 110, 120, that would be 240, but we're still only have a 6-inch line.
Yep.
So, that's a lot. That's a lot of homes
It should be upgraded.
from a 6-inch.
That property connects back on 68, so they were gonna do a commercial on part of that and tie into 68, so you'd have a loop there. So they would have at least an 8-inch on that. But that developer that was looking at that dropped out. He's no longer looking at that, so that's,
Yeah, I mean, you shared that with me, so,
Who knows, but it's a
6
prime piece of
months, 6
property.
years,
it's coming.
yeah, I mean,
And that's something there, again, that needs to review. Every subdivision that comes up, we need to review these things. If you know you got 100 homes going in, you're on a 6-inch line, you've already got so many down there now. Are we gonna ask that developer to come back and let's run 8-inch? Because anything he runs now from where he's gonna connect, he's gotta run 8 inch on all of his mains, 6 inch on his shorts, and on his cul-de-sacs. But you still got that 6 inch gap. We done the same thing on 158. We ran 8 inch down 158. 68. Dorset Downs.
Yeah.
That's where the line ended. When Combs developed the Food Line property, we made him go from that, step it up, and I say we, this was back when it was in
12
Marziano,
Yeah.
I think. Had him go 12 inch, not really for the pressure, but for the volume and the flow.
Sure.
And that's what now has gone in from where it was just gonna be Food Line, then it was the golf course, and that's over to Charles Place. So,
Right, and potentially a lot more on top of that,
Yep.
you know. Let's see, I want to get back to the secondary water.
That's where I'm sitting waiting to go on.
And I think I've probably had individual conversations with most everybody in this room about that 2nd-inch water line. And if y'all have talked to me, you know that I've started out as, you know, I was really, really warm to looking into Rockingham County. And if you've talked to me over time, you know that I've cooled off on that. However, seeing this report from Hazen and Sawyer, in the report implying that there's issues there at Countryside, or let's call it the far northeast corner of our system, northeast corner, and hearing Todd talk about, you know, Peony and all that. In my mind, I've started warming back up to the potential of a secondary source coming down. Just giving you an example, if we came down Southard Road, tying into there's a new water line on 65 at the end of Southard. Mm-hmm. So you're looking at 1.2 miles ish there, and if that came down to 158, in my mind, you have a source of water at the far northeast quadrant of the town system, and then you have a source of water at the far southwest quadrant. Again, very simple-minded here. I'm not an engineer at all, but you know, I would think that could maybe resolve. One, it would give us a secondary source of water. Of course, it would be Rockingham County, but that flow of water could potentially address some water shortages that we're seeing, or we may see, in that northeast quadrant. And then, you know, of course, I'd be remiss to say that the capital expenditure, I believe, is something that the town itself could afford. Whereas if we did Hall River as a town, I think we would, you know, we need help from either a cost-sharing plan with Oak Ridge. Because I think John mentioned, and Hazen and Sawyer said it, Hall River was $4.5 million. I think that's probably a little high.
I think it's high.
I think after the engineering work and laying the pipe, I think you're looking at, you know, closer to 3, maybe not even 3, but closer to
2.5 to 3.
Yeah.
The problem you got coming in from Rockingham County, one, is they treat their water differently, and you can't mix unless you do some kind of expensive blending process, and I don't know the terminology. The other thing is, Rockingham County's buying some of their water from the city of Reidsville, and when the mayors were meeting, Jay Doniker was the mayor, still is a mayor of Reidsville, and he was saying, you know, we are selling, I think it's 50,000 gallons a day to Rockingham County, and that's all we're going to sell. And he knew that we, as Northwest or Guilford County, was looking at Stokesdale, Summerfield, Oak Ridge, a regional water system. He said, we're not interested in that. He said, you know, they wanted to go down Church Street and tie in. We don't want to do the water. I think with what's going on, Rockingham County is spending a tremendous amount of money for Roy Carroll, water and sewer, serving, I guess it'd be their southwest quadrant. I'm not sure they're going to have any capacity they want to sell to the town of Stokesdale, but that's the two issues of mixing the water and then the amount of water. You know, if you want to have a separate line, half of the town of Stokesdale be served by Rockingham County on separate lines, you could do that, but that doesn't allow you to connect to, as a secondary source. You just got half your customers on one and half on the other. It's like Duke Power serves part of Stokesdale and United Energy or somebody, Energy United serves some of the others.
Well, I do know.
Gene, you want to talk about
I
that?
do know with conversations with Bill Lester that Rockingham County and Madison, there is an issue, Rockingham County and Reedsville. There's an issue there. One of them's chloramide, one of them's chlorine. They don't know yet which way they're gonna run the water. Is it gonna run with chloramide or chlorine? They haven't decided yet what they're gonna pump with, who's gonna do what, who's gonna change over, or if they've come up with this fabulous idea on how they can mix the two, which is risky when you're dealing with Joe Public. Hopefully get it resolved, but right now, there's still a gap between those two lines that's not been connected because this one wants this one to take the bite, the other one wants him to, you know.
So let's define, when we say Rockingham County, is there actually a Rockingham County system, or is there a Reedsville system and a
No,
Madison?
Reedsville
Mayodan
is selling,
system?
Reedsville is selling to Rockingham County, if I think I'm correct on that, John. And Rockingham County has brought water up 158 to,
Kellum Mill Road.
Price Mill
Price
Road.
Mill.
Price Mill Road, there to church, and it stopped there. There's a gap between there and the Madison line that came up and 65, and went down 65 and went out Price Mill. They left a gap because they treat the water with two different chemicals.
Right, so Madison's free chlorine for now,
I think so.
and we're free
Now,
chlorine.
what they're gonna do, once they connect this line, and I agree with John. At first, I was kind of confused on why Madison has jumped out here and they're pushing this stuff up here, and then Rockingham's coming up, you know, they're really pushing to get their line in, and then all of a sudden, well, Roy Carroll shows up. And I'm not knocking Roy, he's done great developer. But the incentive was to take care of Roy Carroll and the industrial commercial corridor that he is building.
Right,
As most of you seen the warehouse that we just done a site on, there's a second pad behind it for another warehouse that size. We just started across the street for his third phase. And out Sylvania, he has bought that farm and has posted it, commercial and industrial sites coming soon.
Let me ask you a quick question. With that being said, and I'm looking in my internal vision view of that area up there, on that, there's still farmland to be developed for private homes up there where they're just down from where they're putting the pads and all that.
That's been bought up.
Is that gonna be proprietary though, or is it gonna be on the same system if they were to develop that further in towards?
That's
No,
county
if
water
you-
and sewer, so anybody can tie in.
Yeah,
That's
if you
not
go
Roy
out to,
Carroll's.
if you go out to 68 in Sylvania, you'll notice a tank being constructed, just like our water tank.
Yep.
And they're not putting that up for subdivision. It's gonna be for that commercial industrial corridor.
Right, as a
And
backup.
that's where I feel like it's
Probably
going.
fire protection.
so who do you believe is supplying the water to that commercial corridor? Is it Madison Mayodan, or is it another?
Madison, as of right now,
Okay,
it has been tied in at 68. It's came out Sylvania. It's been run into the site, and we have set the vaults and the RPZs into the plant for the water main. That's where it's coming from.
okay. So,
Now, one of the other things too, Gene, you know, there's rumors among rumors.
Yeah.
I had understood that Rockingham County was willing to run water and maybe sewer from Red Birch up to 158, 220 intersection, or 73.
I have
And
not-
Guilford County didn't want to do that for some strange reason.
I have not heard that. We do have the contract we picked up at Red Birch on the sewer. Came out by Bennett Farm Road. We were running that sewer over. It gets just before you get to 65 headed south. We're coming underneath and crossing over 65 again, going into that same plant.
That's going in behind College Road.
Yep, and that's one, two, I think two lift stations to get back to the sewer lift station already up next where the old P&M used to be.
Right. Okay.
But that's coming down and then west.
And the other thing, Derek, Darren and I went over and talked to Ronnie Tate, the water utilities director, or whatever it is at Madison. And we tried to get them to, they basically said we'd do it. And we said, well, you know, what's going to be the cost per thousand? And they said, well, you know, let us talk. So they finally got back with us, and they were, I think it was $5.65, and we had just cut our rate from Winston to about $3. And so, you know, we'd be crazy to do, pay twice a rate, but that was before anything, Roy Carroll came in, and, you know, you're talking about 1 million square feet of industrial space. I mean, that's a lot of water.
Well, my suggestion would be there again, you can always go back to the table. Sit down with Winston-Salem, Forsyth County, look, guys, we're looking at doing a second source. What can you help us with? Can you do anything as far as kicking in to help us get the line there? And if they say, no, this is it, but we'll continue and we will add to your volume, we'll bump it up for you and leave it at that rate, then you've got something to go back to Madison with and say, okay, look, we're looking at a second source. Of course, you're closer. We'd rather go that way as long as it's compatible. And Winston-Salem, Forsyth County don't have a fit because they're running Rockingham County into their lines, because then you're crossing two water sources.
Now, what do you mean their lines? It would be our lines.
Yeah, but their water.
That'd be interbasin transfer too.
Yeah.
It would be, but,
Well, it is our water, but
right. I mean, as far as interbasin transfers, Reedsville sells, you know,
Yeah.
Greensboro 1 million a day.
yeah. But, you know, you could go back in that scenario and say, look, this is what we're doing now. Chlorine, can we revisit this? We're wanting to look at doing a second
Yeah.
source and get them both on. If you get them gapped out months apart, they'll bounce you back and forth. Just plan a meeting with them, sit down, talk to them, give them a proposal on what you want to do, and let them come back with it and make a decision.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of a plan to get a secondary source if, you know, if we're paying for Hall River by ourselves, and, you know, I don't know if we can swallow a $3 million without potential monies from the Biden money from Guilford County, which it's just too hard to say how much we'll get on that.
Has, John, has Oak Ridge said anything else about supporting some of that line?
There's two different schools of philosophy over there. Some want it, some don't. They have, you know, when we had the meetings with the mayors and the county commissioners, we had a joint meeting, Ann Snyder and I, and Bruce Oakley, and they wanted to be part of the discussion. We were trying to get the Guilford County Commissioners to give us more money. We thought it would be a better selling point if we could say, hey, we're going to serve two towns rather than one. So they are on record with the county commissioners on that $4.5 million we're trying to get, as if they want to be part of it.
I noticed in the Northwest Observer today that they've signed on with someone to facilitate their water thing. And I didn't quite understand the whole, so they're gonna basically take community wells from people and sell the water back to the.
No, what they're doing, any subdivision in Oak Ridge and Ewan over, I think it's 25 lots, they have to build it to the Oak Ridge water spec standards, and then they turn it over to Oak Ridge, and Oak Ridge is gonna farm out the maintenance and the testing and things like that. It'll take them forever to get up enough customers to where it would justify.
Yeah.
Now, they were talking about, you know, we'd like to buy out Aqua's customers. Well, that's a cash cow for Aqua. I don't think they're gonna wanna sell it at, you know, it's gonna be a really high price. I personally think that'd be a whole lot better to be looking at municipal water from, they're closer to Kearns than we are.
Yeah.
They could come down 150 and then hit 68, you know, and
I don't think they're frowning upon municipal water, but, you know, that's, we're talking about extending a line of a system we already have, and, you know, they're talking about a brand-new system, and my goodness, starting from scratch with a brand-new system is,
it'd be 10, 15 million.
you know, it'd be a lot, but, you know, the logistical management of it, you know, they need to think about that too, but Of course, Oak Ridge sharing in the cost of the line down Hall River makes it a whole lot.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it not only does it make it a whole lot more appealing, it just makes it a whole lot more realistic. You know, I don't see how the town absorbs the $3 million price tag.
Well, the one thing to think about, period, with this whole thing, every week we're gonna grow within the confines of this town. We're not going further than this town limits. We're gonna be within. The sooner the better on a definitive system to take care of, because when the one we have breaks, you may have 20% more people than you did the last time it broke. Industry as well as private. And that means to me, and Gene and I spent many hours sitting down there on that road for what, a week and a half, and watching that thing sag to where we were, and it was just, everything fell into place from the phone call at the fire department all the way around. And I immediately had all my phone numbers programmed in and hit emergency management, hit the county, and they were there like that. And it worked out. If we had lost that line, it would have been a very unfortunate circumstance. At the rate of building and development in this town limit, not out into the county part, but in the town limit, we need to make within the next 93 months to whenever we leave, I leave, we need to have something in place that is doable at a very short time, hitting that, pulling that lever and being all into a system. Because if you're building another 100 houses or 150 houses in the next 10 to 12 months, that's a lot. That's a lot of water, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of this and that. And all we're doing is getting potentially, and I'm not being a naysayer, but what I am being is realistic, because we didn't expect that phone call to the fire department that day, much less a week and a half later. The big thing about it is, if we don't have anything in place to cover our growth adequately, then we're not, to me, if I was sitting here, I would have to look at a due diligence type of question, not just why it wasn't done, but what are we gonna do now? And that's tough, and it's not any one person, it's not any one town, it's every town USA, every small town, because developing in the south is going sky high. I've been looking from here down to Florida on development in all 5 states, basically, all the way into the Alabama area over there in the upper Gulf of Florida on the Panhandle. Georgia, South Carolina, and Florida and North Carolina are the hottest move to, retirement, and building going on. So that's my one thing about it. We can advertise quietly, we can billboard, we can do word of mouth of people coming from other parts about what a great town it is. But when the blackout comes at 2 in the morning, we got a lot of people in the high tower elevators stuck, basically. And you guys that have been up north, you know, when you have one of those blackouts in a 40 to 50, high-rise building, there are a lot of people in elevators. And I don't want us as a town to have that kind of reputation. I think we need to come in as quickly as possible and come to a definitive point on a secondary or other system and put a timeline when it's going to go into effect. That's my feel for it, and work as hard as we can as a town to get the monies and not worry about the monies. Because if it happens, it's going to happen. And Gene, we just lucked out that last time. The next time,
I got a couple of questions I'd like to ask Gene. For one, do most towns have a secondary water source? I mean, I'm for a secondary water source, and don't think I'm against it, but do most towns have one?
Well, Jimmy, I really wouldn't know how to answer that. I think a lot of it is, of course, the size of the town.
Right.
I think Madison, Stoneville are kind of working together with their sizes. So they both have water treatment plants also. We don't have that luxury. I doubt all of them do, but are the small towns the size of Stokesdale seeing the growth and the expansion that we're seeing?
Yeah, probably not.
You know, that's what I'm getting at. And guys, who knows with the economy, it may shut down tomorrow, the way things are going crazy. But with what we're already seeing on the books, proposals coming in for more developments, it's not gonna get any smaller. But no, to answer your question, Jimmy, I would not know. I wouldn't think all of them would, no, I would not.
My second question, because, you know, and I seen the pipe that, you know, we thought was gonna break or possibly could have broken and everything. We've heard a lot about that. Let's say the pipe had broke. What would have happened? What would, I know, you know, this is a lot of work, but what would we have done? Would there have been like a part-time fix, you know, to go in there, and how quick would something like that possibly? I know you can't, you know,
Yeah.
be specific, but
Yeah,
what would the
you could-
process have been?
You could put a Band-Aid on it, and you could skip from hydrant to hydrant, isolate that section of line, which would shut down streets, of course, because you're gonna have to, you got side roads, evidently you're gonna have to close one of them off to pull water lines. You could do a bore underneath and do a horizontal bore. We just got lucky that we called the guy. He's done a lot of work for us, and he was on one of our jobs down in Fayetteville when we called him. And he got his stuff together and got up here and done the horizontal bore and got it in quick for us.
Right.
You can patch it. You're not gonna support the town and keep the flow going through a fire line because it won't handle the pressure. You can't pump that at 120, 130 pounds. Luckily, we were up on this end, which, you know, we're looking at 70, 80 pounds. When you get back down toward the lake end, we are exceeding, and we test our lines at 150 PSI. We are exceeding that down there. And that's why when they put in that subdivision, I had to just demand they put in the C900 pipe, which is a 250 PSI working pressure.
Right.
Because we do have a lot of pressure down there.
Right. And my last question, I guess, for right now, from what I understand, or maybe I don't understand, the water at Madison would be compatible with our water if Winston-Salem and everybody was okay. And they were wanting to buy 50,000, did you say 50,000 gallons a day from Reedsville? Does that mean that Madison doesn't have the capacity to do what they need to do with the development? 'Cause I would prefer, you know, coming that way. I think it's shorter. I think we'd, you know, cover, it'd be cheaper for us to do. And I'm not necessarily saying that's what for sure we ought to do.
Right.
But if that was compatible and Winston-Salem agreed, and, I mean, the cost was significantly less to where we had the money now to do it,
Right,
I would really consider that as far as myself.
right.
But back to that, you said that they were, I guess, trying to buy, maybe I heard it wrong, but 50,000 gallons. Does Madison have enough capacity to serve the development that they're doing now with?
Well-
And then us, if, you know.
Right. I think what you're going back to is what John made the comment a while ago about the volume. I have not been in on those meetings. I have had no conversations with them. So I could not even answer your question right now.
Okay.
And that's why I'm saying it's time to make a decision. Okay, if we're gonna do something, we're gonna have to do something sooner or later. Let's go ahead and let's look at both scenarios. Which way is gonna work the best for the town of Stokesdale? Forget Winston, forget Madison. What's gonna work best for the town of Stokesdale in the future coming? And we need to seriously look, and like I said before, and I'll tell you again, it don't have to be Yates, put it out for bid. If we get it, we get it. If we don't, we don't. But I'm concerned enough for the town. It's time to do something, and I think talking about it year after year after year is not getting us anywhere. No progression.
I think we're gonna do something. I think,
I hope so.
I think the consensus on the board is that we'll probably, I can't speak for nobody else, but I think we wanna all do that. It just makes sense to do it, The Madison Way, looks good. Oh, one other thing, the line that serves Kernersville, do you know, is there one line coming from Winston that serves Kernersville? Or is there multiple lines going to Kernersville? The reason I asked that is, let's say we did go that way, and the line broke, I guess it'd have to be up above, where the interstate's at, somewhere in that area, I guess. I'm just guessing. If the line broke between Winston and there, we'd be out of water.
Right.
With both lines, where if we went Madison, we would have that to back us up, and that would be what I'd call a true secondary source.
Exactly, and I think that needs to be part of the conversation with them, and also Madison.
Right.
Do you have another line other than this one we're looking at hooking to? Because I can tell you that as of right now, 158, you have one line.
Right.
From Walkertown to Stokesdale. So be it Winston-Salem on their end, if they have a disruption, and I know they would do all they could to get us back water going, but we could have that very scenario happen past our line going back into
Now,
Winston.
they only have, well, you may not know, but they only have one line coming from Winston to go into Walkertown. Do you know of that? Has anybody seen that?
I do not. I
Okay.
do not.
Because that's possible. I mean, that's what
Yeah.
I'm thinking, if they just got one line going up.
I know we picked up at 66 and 158, Walkertown at the stoplight. And we ran that line all the way down 158 to where our winter vault's at. That's where we tied in at.
Right.
So that was the only line that came down. They did loop off and make a loop on the upper side back around by Blues Creek, over next to the post office, and done a little subdivision up there. But they stopped it up on top. They didn't bring it down toward the lake.
Yeah.
That was sometime after we had done, a few years after that. But I don't know of any other source between Walkertown and Blues Lake that's feeding water.
Yeah, I went over there and looked at that, where the fire hydrant's right there at the curve.
Yeah.
The last fire hydrant. And that, I guess, I thought about that, I talked about it one time in a meeting, said something, and he was talking about going over the bridges and all that, but that would just be on that same line, so that would make sense to come that way as far as Stokesdale getting more coverage down 65. But there again, if you got that line brace, and that's what I'm concerned about going through Kernersville. If they just
Right.
got one line,
Right.
do we really have a true secondary source? We do if it breaks down, toward Walkertown.
Yeah.
But if let's say it breaks between, wherever the junction is for the Kernersville, if there's one, I don't know.
Right.
If it breaks at those junctions, above this way, then our secondary water source isn't worth a hill of beans. But the Madison one would.
I do know.
If that be the case, I don't know what the case is.
Right. I do know that they run, of course, there's water all the way out Piney Grove, all the way out to the new school, back over next to the lake.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of roads that come through. Now, I don't know if they came back down through those. I'm not sure of that. Like I said, I'm sure they've got more than one source, because Kernersville has pulled a lot of volume with a lot of commercial properties. But to answer your question, how many or if they do, I wouldn't know.
I also know that they have water up Pine Hall too, from somewhere. It goes all the way up Pine Hall to, almost to Stokes County, to West Dray Lane and that area, because I used to have it out there. And that's a pretty good ways out of Walkertown, going
Yeah.
back up to
Yes, it is.
65.
Yes, it
But
is.
I tapped into that line 30 years ago.
Okay.
So they've got to have some more sources.
Right.
I mean, because you're way out there.
Well, I think these are some questions we need to answer before we can proceed on which way we want to go. Either way may be fine, but I just think it need to be answered if we want a true secondary source of water. I don't think coming off the same, if it is the same line, I just don't think coming off the same line is a true secondary source of water.
Winston-Salem has 3 treatment plants, it's my understanding.
Yes.
If you look at Kernersville, my God, they're going up, and I don't even know the name of the roads. They've got some industrial parks up there. They've got interconnectivity, 150, 66, all the roads through there, 40.
40 coming across
Yeah.
the bridge.
Well,
I'm sure they're going 66 across all the way from Walkertown back to Kernersville, tying those industrial areas.
there's no doubt in my mind that Kernersville has much more sources coming in. I mean, it is such a huge area, through the 66, 311s, 40 bypasses. But either way, I mean, when it comes back to Stokesdale, we need to ask questions, get on board, figure out, what's best for the town, and try to move forward with it. I'm not saying it's something that's gotta be done right now, but it's not gonna get any better. Our system is gonna get more and more age on it.
At the same time, something needs to be done by the end of June, because
You
we
need
have
to
one-
allocate those funds.
Right.
Yeah,
Right,
I agree.
We need a secondary source of
Quick
water.
question.
Ain't no doubt about it.
absolutely.
The Kernersville line is Old 40 across the lakes, correct?
I'm sorry, the what?
The Kernersville line coming from Winston is on Old 40 across the lakes going down to the Old 40 down there near the,
There and I,
it's different than Walkertown. It comes up the back way where the
Karen, can you speak into the mic?
where the railroad bridge is down there.
right, I'm not sure on that source. And like I said, the water had already been fed out of Winston into Walkertown when we went into this venture in 2001.
Yeah.
So we just picked up from that source and brought it in.
But they didn't indicate coming up at the intersection 158 there going into Kernersville. I think it
And there
comes
again,
in a separate one where the lakes are.
We
on
kind of
that.
got outthought on that. Winston-Salem required a 12-inch line all the way to the lake, to the vault. And they didn't care what Stokesdale ran. It's
Right.
whatever you want to run. At that time, like I said, nobody saw this growing and becoming what it is. 15 years ago, Jimmy, would you ever imagine what you're seeing now? You
No, I
guys that's
sure
been
wouldn't.
around here.
But they did,
I
up
had
to
a
the
little
stump.
Well, they knew that we
That's-
have
yeah.
promised them we're gonna flow so many gallons of water for them daily.
Yeah,
The only way they can provide, they gotta be able to flow it.
sure.
They can give you 600,000 a day, but you can't push but so much water through an 8-inch line.
From a
Try
12
your
ton
best,
eight, you
it's not
can't.
gonna
That's
happen.
right.
It's not gonna happen.
No. And that's my question about the Kernersville line that comes in and stubs at the county line down here at Oak Ridge and that area. If that line that comes into Kayville is coming out of the Old 40 side at the lakes there, where the bridges are, that's a different line, most probably, than Walkertown's line, because I would imagine it came in the back way. where
Well, like I
the old-
said, they've got,
we
you
need a
know,
map.
they've
I
got
can,
so many.
I can actually speak on that. I've got the map up now. So there is a line that comes up 66. It comes out of the, comes all the way out of Winston up 66. And it ties into the line that you're talking about that comes up Business 40.
Yeah.
It ties in right there together, and then both of those lines, once it crosses 158, both of those lines come into Kernersville together. There's 2 tanks in Kernersville. So the line coming up 66 and the line coming up Business 40 look like they join at some point once it crosses over 158. So there is, so more than likely that, and this is an old map, more than likely those 2 tanks are servicing Hall River back down. And
That'd be.
so that would give us a second source in a way, because you've got another source coming into that line.
They were pre-planning too for the future ahead by doing that, putting double lines in.
And then Kernersville also has another line coming in on the Glen High side, up crosses 311 on that side to that Glen High tank. But it doesn't look, I mean, I'm sure it connects at some point now, but it doesn't show it on the map.
And again, I know we're looking at several scenarios here, but kind of everything goes back to that Winston model. They pre-planned for growth for the next 50 years. So 40 years ago probably, or 30 years ago when they
Right.
started doing this.
Yes.
So,
They got a staff of 50 people or so to do
yeah,
that.
they do in that commission over there. But what I'm saying is basically they're prepared to where if they were willing to do it, it's already in place. All we
Right.
have to do is pay and put a pipe till we hit the city limit up here.
Well,
And you've got 2
Stokesdale,
sources from 2 different origins.
I think Martinelle's been really patient, and I can see him. He's got a question, and
His hands
it-
locked
it-
up.
this is a pretty informal setting. So, Mark, I want to hear what you have to say.
Okay, but it's past 150.
Yes.
Okay, you got one. Okay, well, that answers my question.
I tend to agree with the
So they would be.
secondary water
Okay,
source,
What about right here? Let's
because
look
I think the one point that Gene didn't answer when, I guess, Theron
sure
or
there's
Jimmy,
lines
Jimmy
coming
asked the
out of
question,
tank, but
what would
but
happen if the water,
hypothetically-
if the pipe broke?
this line broke.
And I guess the question I would have asked at that point is, how long, hypothetically, if we got a break in a pipe, how long would our town be without water? Would it be without water for 3 hours, 6 hours, a week? And we really don't know that, because that would be dependent on the damage that could be caused.
How long it takes to repair, right?
And, right, so, do we have a plan in place to handle that? So I think the secondary source is good. We have a great relationship, from what I understand, with Winston-Salem. Our prices are going this way, while the prices of everything else today is going that way. So we've got a great relationship. The investment into the system may be more now compared to, let's say, Madison or Reedsville, but we know what we have. They can supply us with I guess, an infinite amount of supply, from what I understand. They're willing to just dump as much water as we can. And I think that's important. That relationship is critical. It took us years, I'm sure, to build that. Not taking anything away from Madison and Reedsville, I'm not sure, you gotta address the elephant in the room here. What kind of potential public issue are we gonna have if it's a mixing of water? I don't know. I'm not a chemist. I don't know anything about that. But the minute word gets out that the water might not be compatible, even people talking about it, could become a real mess for us, and I don't know, And it seems that Reedsville is not really in a position, or Madison, to supply us with our growth. One of the things that I'm concerned about, and I don't know if there are any regulations or any state mandates, and maybe that's something we need to be looking at, is there a mandate as the town grows to a certain population, whatever it might be, that the state government or the county requires a system in place at a certain level? You know what I'm saying? I don't know if there are any mandates. Might be something just to kind of like poke at and see if there are. Maybe there aren't. I don't know. I know in some states there are requirements. As a town gets to a certain level, it's required to meet state guidelines and all these other crazy things. So that's something else. But and another thing I was curious about was, if we have to upgrade because a builder, let's say, for example, Angel Glen is a good example, decides to put in another 120 homes, and now that pipe, which was it 12-inch or whatever that number is,
6, I believe.
6, and has to go to a 12. Why should we be required to do the upgrade? Maybe we need to look at a process when a builder is building that, and that requires more flow. Well, then that's his investment into that. And we can say, well, that's expensive for the builder, but why should we do that? He's building it.
Yeah, that's
what
a
the
really
impact
good
fees are
point.
for.
Yeah.
And I think that's a valid point, because one of the things I think, and I've said this in the past, we can't let builders hold Stokesdale hostage, okay? We all know what this land is worth and what's going on here. I mean, the 4 years I've been here, it's staggering what's happening. And I've heard builders say, well, I'm not gonna build here, I'll go someplace else.
That's fine.
Okay, they're not gonna go someplace else. See you later. Somebody's gonna come in here, because as this development of this all new industry that's popping up along 220 and 65, there's gonna be hundreds of new employees. They're gonna need a place to live. Stokesdale's the perfect place. I mean, it's 2 miles down the road near work, So we're in a good position. But my personal opinion is, I think that we should really look at sticking with Winston, because I don't know if we've had any problems. I don't think we have. I think they've been more than cooperative with us as a partner, and it may cost us more now, but what will it cost us down the road? And I think that's something that has to look at. In other words, we may save a little bit of money now, but down the road, when Reedsville, what happens if we go to Reedsville or Madison and all of a sudden they say, we're sorry, we're capped out. We can't give you any more water. And now we spend all this money to connect here, and now we got to sit down and figure out, geez, what are we going to do now?
Well, you bring up a good point. I'm not sure, legally, once we become a customer of somebody, that they can necessarily say we're going to stop serving you as a customer.
But they could give you a 3-year notification or whatever it might be, whatever the
That's-
contract states, I guess.
That's possible. I'm with you with what you're saying about Winston. I'm with you. I'm throwing out another idea in the event that it becomes a time-sensitive issue to get it done. You know, potentially a $1 million project versus, I just don't know, 3.5, 4, 3,
Who knows?
4. It would be great if Forsyth County was the county that was 1.2 miles instead of 5.5 miles, you know. But the spirit of the idea is to get it, the spirit of my suggestion of the idea was to get it done, to get the ball moving quickly, you know.
Can I just kind of bounce something off everybody, we're talking about $3.5 million, and I think that's pretty much gonna tap our water funds out if we pay, if we paid for that. Do we have any other options as far as funding that, such as bonds, or anything like that, long-term debt?
You gotta have a tax before you issue a bond.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things to remember, if we run that line 5.5 miles from Kernersville to Stokesdale, anybody along that 5 miles, they become a customer of ours. So Oak Ridge may tie in at some point if they don't want to do it now. Anybody along that Hall River Road, they're our customer. And if a developer comes in, they're gonna buy water from us, not Winston-Salem.
Now, John, I don't doubt what you're saying, but if what you're saying is correct, that honestly is an untapped cash cow. But I just don't know if, for instance, if we can claim somebody in Oak Ridge's jurisdiction as our customer, if Oak Ridge has the
We own the
intent.
water line. It's the same situation. When we ran the line from Walkertown to Stokesdale, it's roughly 10 miles.
You didn't let me finish
And,
though.
okay, well, I think I'm gonna address your question.
Okay.
Anybody along that line, Stokesdale was supposed to get a certain amount of money, and I don't remember what it was, $500 or something like that. Stokesdale at some point in time just agreed to take some kind of lump sum, but yeah, we own that line.
I hear what you're saying, and I truly don't, what you're saying makes sense, but I don't know what the law says. For instance, if Oak Ridge came in, maybe call it 3 or 4 years later and said, we want to tweak our town municipal water system from this community well thing to, tying in to Stokesdale's line. So now we have a water system. Can they just overtake the customers we could potentially have along the way if they're in their jurisdiction?
Well, their city limit coming up there is about the wet bridge.
It goes to
down
about
there.
Anthony Road to the county line about.
I think it's pretty simple.
Now,
I think,
Let's say they were going down Limble Road or some of those roads, Pepper Road. We would put a master meter at Hall River Road, and we could either do one of two things. We could charge them a flow rate, if we're paying $3 a gallon, 1,000, we could charge them $4 a thousand to help us recoup over time. I don't know how you would set the rates, or they could, I'm not sure the legality on that, but I do know that we would own the lines.
yeah, so if we bury the line, I agree with John, if we bury this line right here in the ground, so they can't come in here and hook into our line because we own that piece of pipe.
Exactly.
So, unless we want to hook into it and sell them something going to the left. And so I think, even though that's in their right of way, it's not technically part of it's in the state right of way. So we would have that easement and all that legal stuff out of the way. So once we own that piece of line right there, they can't
ours.
get into it. So,
Without
yeah.
an agreement.
Yeah,
written agreement.
everything coming from this box that Winston meters us is ours.
Yeah, it's sort of like all these community water systems in the town of Stokesdale and Oak Ridge. They have a utility deal, and we can't go in there and capture theirs or put them out of business, or, we can't revoke some kind of franchise. The only way we can do it is either buy them out, or we can run parallel lines.
Right.
And it would cost more to run a parallel line in an existing subdivision, because you got to bore under every driveway and things like that. So, yeah, there's no simple answer. The question is, and I get back, Todd and Gene and Diener and DOT, we've had about 10 people at every meeting about 3 times a day, it seemed like. And we were trying to figure out what we were gonna do with water. And they were talking about maybe, tying from one fire hydrant to the other and going through the woods and that kind of thing. But I think one of the things we would have had to do, and I don't know if we're talking about days, weeks, 6 weeks, that kind of thing. In a situation like that, everybody was going down east because of the hurricane. We would have had to bring water in on tankers. And that would have been extraordinarily expensive. And I don't know how you would distribute. I guess you bring it up to the water tower here and suck it up the tower. I don't know. But that would have been a massive, massive undertaking to 20,000 gallons a day or whatever we're using. You're talking about 5, 6 tankers a day.
I mean, just the transportation cost on it would have been.
Well, the
Oh,
big,
yeah.
big
$3,000
thing on
a
that
tanker.
also was that the thought of that as we stood down there waiting for kind of every part of that circle to come together. And the big thing was, and do we have capability from the National Guard for potable water in an emergency? And yes, because it was already under a state of emergency when we had 2 hurricanes come in. The most damage was done down east, but we were still under the same North Carolina circumstance. The only problem was all the National Guard from 3 or 4 states, along with New York, Los Angeles, sent people all the way up here to Martinsville. They were standing by, and it was amazing. I mean, I would have never guessed that if I hadn't seen it. New York state troopers came down into Wilmington directing traffic. So it was so massive that we would have been not even a pinpoint, the tip of the pin, given everything. So there again, that gives me another feel for having from the same original source that has a river and a clean factory redoing every 24 hours. It gives me the security to think that even though we had 2 different lines coming in and we're having them from the same origin, we're gonna have water if we do it correctly. Not 2 different towns and 2 different types of systems being anybody that has a river never runs out of water.
Yeah, guys, you don't need to sell me on 1, a secondary source, 2, Forsyth County. I wish Forsyth County was closer. I'm just thinking about the feasibility of getting it done. I do somewhat gravitate, and I don't think John can answer it because there's a lot to it, but if we can generate revenue from down that 5.5 miles, if we own the pipe and if we can generate revenue outside of our jurisdiction,
Tom can answer that.
well, maybe. He'd have to research it as much as anybody, but I mean, that's a.
Yeah, and I think the other part of that too is if we picked it up in Forsyth County, technically, I don't think even if we could do until we got into Guilford County, our area.
I mean,
Or our town limits. That's the
let's
other
think
question.
about this. Technically, if we put in the pipe up there in Walkertown by Sheets, and that where we put it in and started paying for it, nobody is our customer until they cross the bridge in Guilford
Right.
County.
Correct.
But we were getting
We
something
paid for the
kickback.
pipe.
Right.
The pipe,
pipe, and we did have a tap fee for anything that went on that line from Walkertown down.
in the beginning, yeah,
Rather than trying to keep up with it, then all of a sudden, I forgot what it was.
yeah. Because that was gonna be a no-win situation.
Now, let me throw one thing else out. When we're talking about time, that happened up at Scott Richardson's house. And there's a little creek right there, right where that pipe was. That was the headwater of Troublesome Creek. DOT had everybody in their world out there. And we were within 50 feet of that creek. They originally said we're gonna have to have an environmental impact study before we can fix that line.
Gosh.
Can you imagine how long an environmental, we might have been years doing that. But Mike Painter and the guy from DOT talked to the DOT environmentalist, and they waived that. But if we'd had to do environmental, we'd have been pumping, tanking water in for 6 months, I bet you. That's the kind of thing you don't never know how long it, you know, if the water line hits on a certain place on 158, they could probably fix it in 12 hours or less. But if you have to do an environmental impact study, my kids may be here.
Yeah, and again, you don't need to sell me on the need for a second
I don't
source.
think anybody I don't think there's anybody up here that's against a secondary source. I'm not.
I don't see
No,
it.
I'm-
Well, then what do we do? Then I guess let's just say we settled on Hall River Road, which I'm not saying I'm settling on personally, but, so where do we go from there? Let's just say we all said, we're gonna go down Hall River Road, so where do we go from there?
Bring it all the way up.
No, I'm not saying, I
How we
know,
gonna pay
I
for
know
it?
the route. I'm saying, what do we do? It's gonna cost some money.
Oh, it's going to
So
cost
where's the
some.
money
We don't
going,
have
we
to
gotta know
pay
where the
for it.
money's
That's
gonna
what
come
break the
from,
bank.
and we gotta know all that. I mean, let's do it, cause we're all doing a lot of talking about a secondary source. There's nobody here against a secondary source. So I think that's over with, that talk. Now we need to figure out where we're gonna get our secondary source. What research are we gonna have to do? How much is it gonna cost? Where's the money gonna come from?
Well, we know for a fact that Winston-Salem's willing to sell us water. We know from Hazen and Sawyer and Winston-Salem from Courtney Driver, the shortest distance from point A to the town of Stokesdale, and that's over in Hall River. We've looked at all the other options. We looked down, coming down 65. The next question would be just what we're doing on Ellisburg Road extension. You got to get an engineer to give you an estimate of drawing up the specs. And you could be talking $300,000 or $400,000 on that. That's a long way. The other issue on that, there may be some issues on right-of-ways. Some of these old farm deeds go back 100 years where there was no road up there. That would have been a dirt road. So what the state maintains is typically side ditch to side ditch. As long as you stay in that parameter, you're okay. But those are issues you got to figure out how much is going to. You got to draw up the engineering plan, and then you put it out for bid.
Now you come
Now
down, now
that plan
65
could take you 6 months to do.
65 is shorter, and we cover 3 miles.
Yeah, but
That's Stokesdale.
the big issue on that is the environmental issue of crossing that bridge.
But I'm just saying, if you look at that, you've got 3 miles of Stokesdale that will be covered with water line. You're not gonna have a quarter mile
Exactly,
covered with.
exactly. We'd pick up customers there,
Yeah.
without a doubt.
So I don't know what, yeah, it would. Plus you'd be able to loop in eventually at the Coldwater. And, I mean, I just think it's viable. The only thing I don't like about that is I don't know how that line goes. That line just goes up to Walkertown, and then up above Walkertown got broke.
It does.
I think it goes up Old Blues Creek Road.
Yeah, well, I know, but it
That's
comes back
exactly
in.
where it
It comes
goes.
back into 158.
And unfortunately, I have mapped it out, and that is the only source. The 158 is the ultimate
That's the
source.
negative.
It doesn't meander its way anywhere else through.
Because you don't have I don't consider it a true secondary source if you ain't got,
Yeah.
you know, if you're on the same line from somewhere.
Well, I think the first thing we can do is process of elimination. If you want to go talk to Ronnie Tate over Madison Water Utilities, if you want to talk to somebody in Reedsville, I can't think of the man's name, and see what they have available. According to the mayor, they were only selling Rockingham County 50,000 gallons. Reedsville and Madison Mid-End, they're not large municipalities. Winston-Salem probably has more surplus water than anybody around because they're in the Yadkin River. They got 96 million gallons a day, and they're using 32. So they got 60-some million gallons excess capacity. There are very few towns in North Carolina that even have anywhere close to that. I mean, Greensboro's been suffering for water for 50 years.
Well, we know Reedsville's not gonna work, because you already said the water was incompatible.
Correct. That's
So
chloramine.
let's go talk to Madison and see what they can do. And if they say,
Well-
we can't sell you water, then you can chalk them off.
Well, it
as
sounds to me like if they're having to buy 50,000, that's what I was getting to with Gene. It sounds to me like Madison, if they've gotta buy 50,000 from Reedsville. for down
Rockingham
there,
County's
you
buying
know.
it rather than Madison.
Well, yeah, Rockingham County, but Well, of course you're not gonna go from Madison, you're not going all the way up Ellisboro Road.
No, Madison comes down to 68. Isn't that right, Gene, to Lemons Road?
That's not Rockingham County.
That's Madison. Rockingham County is coming in from Reedsville down 158.
Okay, now, so Rockingham County's Reedsville.
No,
That's their
Rockingham
water.
County's Rockingham
Madison's
County.
the other.
Reedsville has their own separate water. They're selling water to Rockingham County,
So wait a minute, now we're talking about three systems?
at least. And then there's Dan River up at Stoneville.
And, and Reedsville also sells a million gallons a day to Greensboro.
Greensboro,
I mean, that's
down
huge.
29.
Down 29, yeah.
Yeah, and,
To the top part where all those new houses went in.
so I guess one thing that in my head is are all these town leaders gonna one day sit down and say, guys, it would be better for the entire system if we all treated our water the same. And, you know, we need to either all be free chlorine or chloramine. I think the only reason that Reedsville's chloramine is because that's what Greensboro is, and Reedsville wanted that opportunity to sell 1 million gallons a day.
Who knows?
Yeah, but Madison, as it stands now, is free chlorine, and you know that's where we are, and you know I wish all things were equal, and we were looking at Forsyth County being 1.5 miles away, and Rockingham County being 1.5 miles away.
Let's just buy a lottery ticket. If we
And we really wouldn't be having this conversation. We'd be voting and moving on, and it sounds like it really.
We'd already voted.
But
So do we just need to kind of rule out everything but Madison, since it's kind of the simpler of the three, and just go talk to them and ask them?
Yeah.
You know, can you sell it to us? would-
What price?
Yeah, what price, how much, and how long?
Now, the other issue with town selling water, Winston-Salem guarantees what, 200,000 gallons of water? 300. They don't charge us for the water we don't use.
Right.
Now, some towns, if you get an allocation of 300,000 gallons, they're gonna charge you for the 300,000 gallons whether you use it or not. So you gotta be real careful when you negotiate that, or you could be paying, we're using 120,000, if we had to pay for 180, we'd be in trouble.
No, I agree, and that's,
So you gotta know all the fine details.
Yeah.
we just need to kind of answer those questions, sounds like pretty quickly. Is it even a remote possibility? Because if it's not, and we can figure that out in one meeting, then we just need to move forward with Winston and be done with it, and figure out how we're gonna pay for it.
All you gotta do with Madison, they're not a big conglomerate like the big cities are. Pick up the phone tomorrow and call the utilities director, ask him ABC, he'll tell you ABC, and you'll know right then whether it's even worth going any
Or
further.
somebody wants to ride with me up there one day, I'll set up an appointment and we'll go talk to him.
Yeah, I'll go,
Either way.
just whatever day's good for you. I don't
I'll
have a
call him
job.
up.
So, I'm out of work, boys.
Fire chief wants to go, I think. He's
Yeah,
over
man,
there shaking
we'll take the
his
fire
head.
truck up there.
The big, yeah,
Anybody have any more questions?
like the
And if it
whirl of-
doesn't work after we talk to them, we'll know.
Huh?
If
Yeah.
it doesn't
Oh,
work.
exactly.
And I acknowledge that you had this conversation 2 years ago, and I acknowledge that it may be frustrating to you to go back down a path you've already been on. But at the same time, the landscape has changed of the infrastructure, you know.
Let me ask you a quick question. Madison's running their own town, of course. They're now putting water down here for a large industrial complex.
Rockham County.
Well, Rockingham is,
It-
are they not running parallel sewer and water down?
It's Rockham County funding that.
But I'm saying, where are they getting the water? Madison Water?
I don't know. It could be Reedsville, could be, I don't know.
Yeah.
Water
Water
coming,
going into that plant right now is coming out of Madison off the 226.
right, as it stands. And the sewer line has to run down from there also, correct? Aren't they running a parallel sewer?
Yes,
Okay. With that being said,
that's treated in Mayodan.
correct.
There's
One's
some-
Madison and one's Mayodan. They are doing that based on one profitable situation in that complex in that X amount of square miles. I don't know, and I'm speculating again. They're in the midst, I would say, of a very complex to them, small town of having these two huge plants come in that'll be there after we're all, nobody will even know our names. I would, again, pick up the phone call, either make an appointment or talk to the director, find out, because I think in 5 minutes' time, it'd take you longer to drive up there than it would for them to say, I'm sorry, we're in the midst of this, we're committed to that. We're coming past the next town below us, and we're already putting lines all the way in over the last 3 years just for that facility at this point. That way you'd know whether it was even negotiable to go up, because they're still limited on a certain amount of water for their town people, system-wise, and this. And then they're coming past that into the next county. And that's what I'm thinking. But you can find that out. I'm not saying it is, but I think a phone call to the utilities director would let you get a taste before you made an actual big time going up there. Nothing wrong with that, like you and I did 3 times back over into Rockingham. But as it turned out, they had other plans the whole time, and they didn't say no to us. We just happened to find out a year later when they wouldn't call us back.
Gene, getting back on what you said it's coming down 220 to 68. I thought they were serving that, they ran a water line down from Riesel 158 to Price Mill Road, 65,
Across the bridge.
Fair Stored Road, bored under 220, and then went back across Lemons Road. So I thought that was Rockingham County water.
That was the loop.
They just haven't looped it.
They have not tied it in together. I think the original plan was Rockingham County was gonna slide in on that. And I think Madison saw the opportunity because that corridor is moving from there back out towards 68. And all of a sudden, there was a water tower going in at 60. And still paying.
But Rockingham County built that tower, right?
Just being constructed,
Well-
haven't put in yet.
Yeah, but Rockingham County's funding that.
I do not know if it's Rockingham or Madison. I assume it is Madison because they did come across 68. The line stopped originally not coming under 68, and they brought it through. And that's why I said they kind of come up and butted heads and stopped. The line's just through there, but Priceville Road and 158, there's a gap.
Yeah.
It's not tied in.
I'm sure
It would be
Rockingham,
their advantage too if they could loop those, because they'd increase their pressure and quality. So if they can't do it, we can't do it with Winston-Salem in all probability.
I think they're still trying to work out the logistics of who's gonna do what with the chlorine, how they're gonna treat the water. And eventually they'll come to a solution, both be on the same page. I don't know why they haven't already, or why they even, unless it's the fact they're selling water in Greensboro there. Which, you know, we've talked to several, Hazen Zazaria says it's one of the worst things to do, try to
Mix and match.
chlorine balanced in the system without having issues with water quality.
you're talking about if you've got chloramine and chlorine, yeah.
Yeah, I see bad written all over it, but I mean, there again, I'm not a chemist, I know that, not that much about it. Everybody you talk to, they want the drug-free chlorine.
Okay. So is it the will of the council, Jim and I try to set up something with Rockingham County and or Madison, find out what's available?
Yeah, y'all
least,
have
you
the
know, we can-
conversation.
You said something about Winston-Salem, checking with Winston, if they'd be okay with, because I know you're already set up and they're okay with what you're talking about doing. I mean, that would be important. That-
Oh,
That also. I mean,
they'll give you a commitment in letter any way you want it. I mean,
No, that's not what I'm saying. I know you've already got that. And by the way, I want to ask in a minute about Tom, how that's going with what we tasked him. But, you know, you probably, I mean, you got a line of communication with Winston. You probably need to realize, find out, you know, what they feel about that too, because, I mean, they are our
about
main
mixing
water.
water,
Huh?
about mixing water. with
Yeah.
water. Oh, yeah.
I mean, make sure, because before y'all even go there, you need to make sure that we're okay with them.
Well, we're gonna have to pay for the water mixing too.
Yeah, well, I understand, I
town, so
understand.
you're
I
right.
already sense there's 3.5 votes here to do it through the Hall River Road. I've got enough sense to know, and that's okay. You know, if you wanted to, you know, I mean, that's fine. And I'm not saying I'm against or for anything. I just don't know. As far as it goes.
Hey, I guess one of the things I've hesitated on that, Jimmy, I don't want to raise any red flags over with Winston-Salem. Well, hey, they're pursuing Rockingham County and they're wanting to mix our water. It may affect our relationship with them. Let's talk to Rockingham County and see what they are willing to do. And then when we find out how they treat it, how much they give us and what they're gonna pay, then we go to Winston-Salem and say, okay, here's a second alternative. Would you still sell us water, or is this gonna be a deal killer for the 300,000 gallons we got now?
Right. Well,
It's a complicated thing. It ain't just
yeah, I know it is. That's
digging a
why,
well.
that's why I don't have a real opinion on it. Like I said, I feel like 3.5 of y'all are already there. And that's okay. That's why we're all here. Now, I'm just throwing up questions and all. But, if that be the case, and because it only takes 3 votes here, you don't have to have 3.5.
We've never had a half a vote yet.
Yeah, I know. But I'm just saying, if that be the case, and then you guys that think like that need to start thinking how you gonna do it, and, then that's where we start talking about bonds and things like that, if the money.
Then you're gonna have to have a tax.
Well, I know, and I don't
You
know
gonna vote for
of
that?
anybody that
You
ran
gonna
on
be
the
the
tax.
3.5 on that, Jimmy?
I don't know anybody up here that ran on the tax.
Well,
I ran against it.
The other part about all this too is keep in mind that if we're gonna have a secondary system and we have a primary already, you gotta have a secondary system that's gonna end up being in the same availability as the primary if something happened to the primary. And if you have 500 million gallons from one and 35,000 from the other, and we're having to use 2 to get as growth goes within the town limits, and you have to depend on one all of a sudden, and it's down to 75% for the next 4.5 weeks. Who you gonna pick and choose to close their house out and move to a motel while the neighbors across the street are getting the older one? So there's some things that I think that we really need to look at, rule out certain things or rule in availabilities. But one thing I would be consistent with, don't go in there and pick up the rattlesnake and don't expect to be bitten if you irritate the rattlesnake. And that's our original source. They've been good to us. They were there when we needed them. They've given almost untethered availability for water. They're happy when they do the contract. They're more than willing to do it. And I'm not saying don't find another source, because we've got to, this one place up here has to make decisions and vote on those decisions to affect everybody for growth in this town from now on. 10 years from now, there will be 5 different people, most likely, that will be doing the same thing about a sewer system coming in. So just remember who was with us, where we know we can get the water. It may cost us a little more, but at the same time, you rule out certain chemical, environmental issues, you rule out this, you rule out that. We know they're gonna help us on that, or gonna be there, unless the whole nation shuts down, then we don't have to worry about it. This will be.
Yeah. The other thing we need to do.
Go to Winston. That's clear. You made yourself clear on that.
Yeah.
You're one of the 3.5. And that's okay. You're already there. But what, if you're there, if y'all are there, then you gotta figure out how we gonna do it. Where's the money gonna come from? We can't just boom and the money appears. So, that's what it sounds to me like, that no matter what I want, or half of 4 down there, wants.
My half weighs more than these other guys' half.
But what I'm saying is, you gotta then it's time to start figuring out how you gonna do it. How we gonna pay for it and all that. I know it's important, and he's probably got enough doing it. But I'm just
My
saying,
biggest
that's
issue
where
is
it's got.
we keep kicking this down the road. I think we need to rule out Madison for good. If we're gonna do that, let's just rule it out.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, we've got to make a commitment on some of this money by next year. If it's the engineering study or something, but we've got to encumber some of this money pretty quickly. And we can't encumber it until we make a decision. So I think that's our pressing issue.
Not only that, we can't really encumbered until we have engineering plans done.
Right. You
And,
can't bid it out.
and John's right, that's gonna take a bit.
Yep.
If we do Hall River. I don't think they'll be as complex if we do. So, I mean,
Well, again, I go back.
let's vote. Do we wanna look into, does the majority of this council, Jimmy's 3.5 or whatever, do we wanna take the time to vet out, do we wanna even take that time?
Well, I don't think it'll take a week. We should have an answer back if we can get an appointment with the people in Rockham County by next week.
Well, you talking about
Now, the
Rockingham
other
and-
thing we need to be doing, we need to be hard selling this to Guilford County. So listen, here's our
Well,
situation. You got $102 million. We want our share, damn it. You took our tax money away.
Yeah, either give us our tax money back or give us some
Yeah,
money
give us
for-
$1 million a year back tax and we'll
Well,
afford ourselves.
I hear you, and I have personally just had conversations with,
Justin Conrad.
and Justin Conrad's, he's outnumbered up there, but, you know.
Look, well, again, just keep in mind, the one thing we gotta be concerned with, because growth is gonna happen, the town's gonna fill up, there's not gonna be any more city limits past there, because they're all different counties except one, and that's below us. The big thing about it is that if we get a separate or a secondary, it's gotta be equal to cover the entire town, period. Just like Winston breaks down, we've got a secondary. If they broke down, we don't have a whole town hooked up to that. So somebody's gonna have to give, when you mix the two systems like that anywhere, you got to be ready for both of them to be just as equal.
I got
and run 50% of the time each, so they can turn a valve, go in the box and turn it, and it bypasses where it isn't working and picks up the entire thing of the whole town.
Okay.
And that's,
Well, I got you. I mean,
Let's-
to your
Is
point. if-
everybody in agreement? Jim and I go talk to.
yeah, I
Rockham?
would.
Yeah.
That's fine.
I'm totally.
We'll make a
agreeing.
report back and then we can move
Let's
on.
vote on it.
What are we gonna do if they say, oh, yeah, we'll get you all the water you want, and,
Well, we'll say, okay,
you know, how much is it
how
gonna
much
be?
will you give us?
Yeah.
What price? And where are you gonna give it to us?
And the
How you treat
longevity
it.
of how long.
This, the
they'll
only
do it.
thing I'm saying is this, I'd like to see it looked at, but if you guys have already made your mind up that you wanna go down Hall River Road, there ain't no sense in beating around the bush.
No,
Let's
all,
vote.
all I know is 2 or 3 years ago when we started out,
Yeah.
we went and had a lot of meetings. We talked to the
Yeah,
county
yeah.
manager. We thought it was a done deal and then they reneged on it. And then they said 565 and then they never even gave us an answer back. I don't think personally they're gonna sell you water because Roy Carroll's gonna be a tremendous tax boom for them.
Yeah.
And they're gonna take care of him before they take care of Stokesdale. I
Do y'all
guarantee you.
understand what I'm saying?
I
I'm
understand,
just-
I
I'm
understand.
being
It's
just
worth
as
our time.
straight up.
If it takes us 2 or 3 hours in a conversation,
Yeah.
my time ain't worth that much.
Well, I
If it'll
understand,
help the
I
town of
understand,
Stokesdale.
but I really do. I sense there's at least 3.5 guys here that already ready to go.
But we gotta figure out how to pay for it, Jimmy.
Well, I know you do. I know you do.
Well, you
Okay.
got-
Well, I'd like to see that. I'd like to see what Madison has to say. And I
Again,
know Theron, he wants to go up Hall River Road there before he gets to Florida.
no, I wanna
And I
make,
understand.
I really, honestly, again, can Madison cover everything in Stokesdale if the other one goes down on, like, we stood down there for a solid 4 or 5 days and back getting run over 10 times every 4 minutes with tractor trailers. You gotta be able to have a switching process to put one in.
Eileen,
It sounds like we just need to buy some traffic vests and traffic wands.
We were on,
Or anything.
we
Called
actually
on
had
Miss
to
Terry
hire
there.
deputies to come out part-time over there and, so we could work.
He called on me.
Yes,
That called on me, honey, okay?
ma'am?
John called on me,
yeah.
so please be quiet for a minute.
We've missed you, Miss Terry.
Any more minutes?
I think you would have a better chance if all 5 of you went down to Guilford County and requested some kind of money from what they're getting, better than going to Madison, because I'm thinking to myself that might offend Winston. They may agree to it, but somewhere down the line, they may end up saying, you know, you're ending up getting more water from them or whatever. I don't
care of that issue.
But I think that you have more of a chance, because I think that as a small town here, and you guys doing a good job, they should listen to you, and some of that money should come here. We don't get any kind of tax money. That doesn't mean when I go shopping, I don't have to pay taxes. I pay taxes on everything I buy. So why aren't we getting some of it back? Because we don't have a tax? That doesn't make sense. It doesn't at all.
Yeah,
We're all paying, wait a minute, we're all paying our county taxes. We're paying North Carolina. I have to pay estimated taxes to North Carolina every quarter. So, I mean, why are we not getting any of that money back? And I think that you all should put on your best suit, the one you got married in, and go down there and make a presentation. Let the mayor speak, and then a second person, and then Jimmy could stand there and say, you know what, we're growing and we need it, because Jimmy sounds like he really has his heart into what he's doing. You guys sound like you've got your heads into it, he's got his heart into it. So that would be a good combination. But I really would think that you should go down there and speak, because
Man, every council that I know of has been in talk to the county commissioners. They changed it per
I'm
capita.
not talking about the tax money, I'm talking about the grant money they're getting.
I've had 3 Zoom meetings with county commissioners and county manager.
Gene.
We're working on that.
Gene, I got one.
It's just a question, they've got, what is it, 18 or how many municipalities in Guilford County? 18 or 28?
Oh, municipalities, I think
Sorry,
there's
buddy, thank you.
15 or 16.
Okay. So everybody's wanting a piece of the pie, and basically they said, go back to your town and tell us what you want to do with it and how much you need, and then we'll make a decision. And we've done that.
Have you done it?
We've done that.
And have they made any decisions yet?
Nope. That's why I'm gonna call them to, first of the week and find out, we asked for 4.5 million out of 102, but, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, but there's a lot of politics involved in that.
I'm sure where money is concerned, there is politics.
So, we're working on it, but, as far as I'm concerned, we're sort of through with this. We'll get back with you next week when Jim and I talk to, Rockingham County. Darren, I think you
I
said you had
did,
something.
I don't, it's not about secondary source. Gene, what are your thoughts on a elevated tank agitator? Agitating that water in there?
I don't have.
You don't have any thoughts?
We do not, we have never done any repair or any work maintenance wise in a tank system.
Mm-hmm,
So it'd be out of my wheelhouse.
okay,
I would go back to the ones that we had to do the prep work and the renovation on the tank, talk with them. Not necessarily Hazen, but the company that actually done the work
Greensboro.
and see what they say. I keep hearing Hazen say we're not doing a tank turnover. Guys, I'm telling you, I've watched that tank sit there since 2003. That tank is not hitting the volume that it used to hit. If you watch that float,
Yep.
it's running sometimes 30%, 40% in it, sometimes less.
Yep.
You never see it come up to a 70, 80% capacity like at one time that it did.
It was
Okay.
three.
That growth done.
sure.
I know probably some adjustments to the Winston-Salem side where they want to keep. But as far as what you're talking about in Derek, I'd be speaking out of mine.
Okay.
But when they ran maybe the new line, I don't know exactly when, the water going down 68 doesn't go in a tank. That's a direct flow
Yeah.
off of 150. It doesn't go in a tank and then come back out.
No, 68, there's one tank, well, there's 2 tanks on it between their masts.
No, from our water system up to like Arbor Run, the shopping center. Doesn't that water flow directly from 158 to 68 rather than come into the tank and then back out?
Yeah, it's not directed into the tank and then back.
Wouldn't that have an impact?
As far as,
At one time, all the water came in the tank, right?
no.
Oh, it did? No, I thought it did.
It's always been dispersed through the line. The only thing you do is you build pressure, and all your lines start capping off, all the homes are shut off, nobody's using water, then your water pressure forces it up. And rises from the tank. That gets you the elevation. It'll flow so much more than we're using, it'll flow to a certain point that it'll rise volume, and then it's demand, usually at night, people's taking showers, stuff like that. Weekends especially, right now with all the irrigation and, watering the yards and all, then you'll see that level really drop. And that's when it's really turning it over in the tank. You're not having that.
So you want the water tank level lower is better?
Well, you have to look at that flow it'll kind of fool you. When it's at the top, you don't have much water.
It's
That's
low.
right, that's
Coming
right,
down,
that's right.
Upside down.
You're increasing the amount of water.
So we're looking at going up, on a vertical, it looks like
Hazen-
25%,
when
but
Hazen
it's
looked at
really
it and
more.
done their study, they like what they saw because they think that we had turnover going on. Even though they would want more, well, yeah, you can, but if we grow more, we're gonna continue to have more turnover.
By default.
But they liked what they saw as far as their readings, and I think they watched it for about a week, put a couple gauges on it. So,
But can we set our altitude adjustment valve or whatever it is?
you got an altitude.
Have we ever adjusted that? I mean,
I have never. We do not touch anything inside that valve that pertains to that tank. Because one wrong twist in there and you could actually flood the tank. Trip up a valve in there to where we start losing pressure rather than gaining it. We've had the valves, the altitude valve there and the PRZ at the vault, I think has been rebuilt twice. And it's been a while since it was done the last time.
Was it
I
what?
think in year they even talked about that, doing some upgrades.
who would make a decision to adjust that altitude? Would that be Winston-Salem? Because it's based on altitudes of tanks and all this. We would do it, or Hazen, sorry.
The vault last time was what, 2 years ago? 2.5, 3 years ago? We
2020.
we worked in the vault
Yeah.
when it went bad, kind of almost over a weekend.
3 years ago.
Yeah, 3, and it went like Friday till Monday.
Yep.
And the cost was a little different than we heard from somebody up front.
It's really not that bad as far as
No.
maintenance items on those valves. But I think if you talk to anyone, they're gonna recommend that you set them up on like a 5-year maintenance or
Yeah.
rebuild or whatever. It's a rebuild kit.
Yeah.
Casket's not gonna go bad, but those glands, they're rubber, they're neoprene seals.
And they're
they're not
working
bad. You
constantly.
flex them so much, it's like anything else, a diaphragm. It eventually gives up.
And,
But Winston-Salem just recently changed out some of the meters in the vault. They went from a 4-inch to a 1 or something at their expense, right?
They did. They own all the meters. When you go down to our vault, first vault you come to is Winston-Salem.
Right.
We put it in, we pay for it, but that's Winston's.
in their key
It's
onto
kind
the
of no man's
padlock.
land for Stokesdale because it's their meters, everything's confined in there. Then our valves are on the outside and 2 more vaults that belong to Stokesdale. But, we've got a good rapport with Winston. I mean, I go in the valves, into the meter vault several times, no problem, but it's kind of taboo. You don't go in their meter vaults. Thinking that you could open up a bypass valve and just, the meter quits running and you're taking water. That's why they do that, but,
Okay.
One more question for Gene.
go ahead.
If you could make the decision yourself, the sole person, which way would you go if Winston was $5 million and Madison was $1 million?
Well, here's where I'm gonna go with that.
Here we go.
The way I started this meeting tonight, what did I first say? We've got to have conversations. Either way. If Madison can provide and do what Winston-Salem's doing, in case we have to fall back on Madison and say, okay, guys, it's nice that you're gonna give us 75, but right now we got an issue in Winston, we need 275. That's where you're gonna get tripped up at, in my opinion.
Yep.
Winston is gonna be more expensive. Do we know the source? Yes. Have we dealt with the people there for years? Yes, they've been good. What Madison is gonna offer, conversations John had with him, I haven't been in on those, Jimmy, so honestly, I could not tell you where that would go. But it's like I started the meeting out saying, we need to have the conversation. Whatever the conversation is, guys, we have got to make a move. We've got to quit kicking it down the road.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
We've been doing that year after year after year, and I agree. I think we need to talk to both. throw one out. You're talking about a lot of money, but y'all also looking at, every one of these people out here that lives in Stokesdale, all these folks, you're looking after them.
Right.
Their future, your kids' future, yours, your grandkids. You want a system that's dependent, that's clean, that's productive, and that will protect in case you have a fire in the middle of the night, a two-story house and your grandchild on top of it.
And you don't wanna see me back on 158 again, do you?
No, I don't see you.
Okay, I make a motion, we adjourn.
All right, second motion.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thanks, everybody, for coming out.
Chief's got it.
One quick thing, I wanna go on the record, a
Okay.
clarification. And she can report, I don't want the people on Peonia to think that they don't have water supply for fire protection. We were just, they may read that and think, oh gosh, we don't have water. We just thought it would be better, it kinda tripped us up, being that close to the tank. No, they've got water for protection. It just wasn't what we thought it would be in this part.
Sure.
And we're hoping it's gonna, now that we got it looped, it's gonna be even better than what it was.
Right.
Well, we know y'all got it covered. Y'all, you know, y'all always had it covered.
Give it to me.
Always had it covered.
I'm gonna call them and I'll call you. And just let me know, send me a text, and I'm.
To shed. Or not to shed.
You going to the beach?
Too.